Well, everyone, Super Tuesday has come to an end. Even as I'm making this video, which has been 3 days since the Super Tuesday primaries occurred, we're still feeling its effects, especially amongst the Democratic Party, since now the progressives and the far left have been dealt a massive blow. I'm kind of surprised of how well Joe Biden had done in the Super Tuesday primaries. I mean, sure, obviously, when I looked at the results earlier in the day, it did show Joe Biden was doing good, but I did not know how good he was doing. He won 10 states out of 14. Bernie Sanders managed to win 4 states. This has managed to allow Joe Biden to catch up to Bernie Sanders. Now, Bernie Sanders still maintains his own support and still has a good number of delegates behind him. But nonetheless, Joe Biden has managed to usurp Bernie Sanders from the throne as the frontrunner for the Democratic Party. In fact, it even shows within the current delegate count. I talked in my previous video how Joe Biden was behind Bernie Sanders in terms of delegate vote, which, as you recall, Bernie Sanders originally had 60 delegates, and Joe Biden had 54. And that was before the Super Tuesday primaries. Now, after the Super Tuesday primaries, Joe Biden is ahead with 664 votes, and Sanders at 573. Now, they're still going to at each other's throats, still trying to get the front-runner status. But right now, Joe Biden has managed to accomplish the impossible and regain his crown as the frontrunner. And it completely makes sense with the reality of what's been going on with the Democratic Party. A lot of the candidates have decided to call it quits. I talked previously about Pete Buttigieg and of course Amy Klobuchar in my previous video. But now, after their poor results in Super Tuesday, Michael Bloomberg and Elizabeth Warren have finally dropped down and endorsed Joe Biden. Their results were so bad that in the case of Michael Bloomberg, he managed to win only American Samoa. I'm sorry, the idea that Michael Bloomberg, who has spent over $500 million in campaign ads that I have been seeing a lot on YouTube, only wins American Samoa. You have to find that a little bit funny. But in the case with Elizabeth Warren, I think it's a little bit better. Because Elizabeth Warren, she is a senator from the state of Massachusetts. And while she wasn't doing very good in the polls, especially even before, I didn't expect her to come up near sorry, tongue twister. I didn't expect her to potentially come up to match with either Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden at this point in time. But as her state was initiating the primary, the final results tallied with her coming into third place in her home state. In her home state, she didn't get second or first. And Joe Biden managed to carry the state itself, by the way. Elizabeth Warren could not carry her own state. If you cannot carry your own state, what chance do you have of winning a nomination, much less a general election? So, with that in mind, she has finally dropped out, and like many before her, endorsed Joe Biden. This has finally solidified the moderate base within the Democratic Party behind Joe Biden, and of course the establishment as well. Now, true, there is still Tulsi Gabbard that's currently in the running, but she's not really much of a big threat. In fact, she currently has only two delegates. 2 delegates. So it would take a tremendous amount of effort for her to suddenly get as much support in the future, and just to make a make a big comeback and usurped as the front runner. But I highly doubt that from ever occurring. I honestly believe that eventually, within this week or two, this is just my prediction. Tulsi Gabbard will eventually say that she has had enough and she's calling it quits because she cannot gain any more support aside from 2 more delegates. Hell, it even shows within the next debate where a lot of the DNC has been establishing new rules to prevent her from coming on to the debate stage at this point in time. And considering how badly she's been doing within the polls and her delegate count, it kind of makes sense why at this point. Earlier, not so much, especially since she still had that public support behind her, and she was liked within the moderate community, the independents, and even the few Republicans. If there was one candidate that, while I disagree with and I will not vote for, but I highly respect him within the field of the Democratic nomination of this year, it would definitely be Tulsi Gabbard. That's how much of an impact she has. But regardless, I honestly do not see her. I honestly do not see her gain a boost in popularity or support. I really don't. There would be to be a miracle at this point. But with that out of the way, the moderates, the establishment, and anyone who is opposed to the far left and the progressives within the Democratic Party, and anyone who is opposed to Bernie Sanders whatsoever, is now mainly solidifying their backing with Joe Biden. Now, of course, there are still going to be a lot of people who probably would not like the idea of having Joe Biden in office, which is very understandable, not just from different candidates within the nomination that they supported, but also the obvious if he can potentially beat Donald Trump, especially since he's been dealing with several issues amongst the campaign trail. Hell, even with the whole alleged claim of him possibly having dementia, which I cannot say for certain whether or not he has. But nonetheless, he has that major backing now, and now it is finally solidified that it can now be a potential, the biggest barrier to Bernie Sanders towards to gain the nomination. It is definitely looking like it will be a Biden versus Sanders race. Either of those two within the primaries. Now, in this case, as it obviously shows within the Super Tuesday primaries, Biden has the advantage. He has he provides an illustration of himself being a little bit part of the establishment, but also a moderate, at least within the Democratic Party. He has managed to apply that illustration towards him, and I know that there are going to be a lot of people down in the comment section and just looking at my video that say that he's a leftist and that sort of thing. But the point stands. He has managed to obtain that picture for himself. Compare that to Bernie Sanders, who already admits that he's a socialist and has committed made several controversial statements as relating to Cuba, to China, and other dictator regimes, which I talked about in one of my previous videos. So it definitely is looking like Joe Biden is going to take the nomination, even with especially with the current delegate count as it is, which I need to remind you is with Biden 664 and Bernie Sanders at 573. But of course, there will also be the hardcore Bernie supporters that would rather stick with Bernie than to go all in with Joe Biden. And that's going to have potential damaging results for the Democratic Party come this election in November. Because these supporters are very hardcore. They'd rather go with Bernie or no one at all. Many of them would probably just stay at home. Some, I would even argue, would go on to say, screw you, and vote for Donald Trump. Or even an independent candidate. Regardless, they are going to be the thorn in the Democratic Party's side. Possibly even its killing blow. Without these supporters, the Democrats have no chance at winning against Donald Trump. Even with someone like Joe Biden, with that picture of being a moderate, they have no chance. People like how Donald Trump is doing, how he's giving results with his presidency, with the economy and foreign policy and taxes, that they just don't want any change whatsoever. They don't want to go back to something back like in the Obama administration where it was completely different, where recovery was really slow. They want to remain with Donald Trump because so far he's managed to maintain his promises, and he's managed to give major results back to the American people. And it shows obviously within his first term. The only thing that I can say for certain is with Joe Biden becoming the nominee, it's likely that there will be a possible status quo with the establishment, at least for a period of time. But eventually, the Democratic Party will need to reform. There will need to be a populist, an outsider, away from the establishment. Because that's at this point, that's the only thing that's going to get independents and the few Republicans to join them, to get them to be reelected into either the White House or into Congress. That's the only thing. People do not like the current establishment because it is the same old thing. But people also do not like what Bernie Sanders is providing, such as socialism. They don't like that. Too radical. And also among other things, but also due to its radicalization. But anyways, people will be looking for a new candidate, someone that focuses more on the people and is nowhere near the establishment. That is the only case where I can see the Democratic Party winning in the future. But currently, honestly, with Joe Biden as the nominee, they will potentially do less damage to themselves, as they are no longer going to give Bernie Sanders and his supporters any more legitimacy within their own party. Of course, they have to finish all the primaries and stuff, and of course the whole idea of a broker convention, which honestly, in my personal opinion, I don't think there's going to be a broker convention. I think that Joe Biden is going to carry it out of the way. But for right now, the Democratic Party is in the free fall. The Democrats, I highly believe, will not win this election. They will need to reform. They will need to look elsewhere. Not within the establishment, not within the far left, but somewhere else. If they want to regain the trust of the American people, if they want to regain any chance of winning future elections, they need to rebrand themselves. And they're not going to do that in 2020. My name is Noah Meehan on The Yark Truth. Please post your comments down below, like this video, subscribe, and share with your friends. Also, if you have any issues regarding my videos, such as how I make them, how I frame them, how I speak, any improvements you want me to make, or any subjects you want me to talk about, please post them down in the comment section down below, or directly message me. Thank you.